This is a generous room. I mean, we're here to share. If you don't want to answer something, or if you don't want to participate or talk about certain topics, it's okay, right? And also, if you have something to share, please go right ahead. There was a really interesting point that I wanted to double click on. Anoop, you mentioned the next curve, and I
Mhm.
was wondering if you were referring to what I was thinking of or something else.
Yeah, it was a book that I was referencing called From Strength to Strength. I forget who
Yep.
the author is.
Arthur
Um,
Brooks.
yeah, Arthur Brooks,
Yep.
and he describes this phenomenon where you know, obviously your first curve is your primary kind of profession or career, and a few things kind of jumped out to me that he commented on, and many different types of anecdotes and evidence-based um, things. And one is that you kind of reach your prime much earlier than you actually realize, in terms of, obviously when you're at your best, whatever sort of KPIs or performance metrics you want to look at. And, at least in the medical world, that's actually very top of mind for me. Obviously, we don't want to run into, any sort of major kind of complications, medical legal risk, et cetera. And you kind of see physicians really handle this very poorly. I don't think I'm there yet, but it's certainly at the back of my mind. And I just feel like there's many ways that I could use that experiential, what I've learned over the many years being a surgeon and a physician in a complete different capacity, that may ultimately kind of be a little bit more conducive to having a little bit more control over my day-to-day life, having a little bit less issues with burnout and so forth.
It was exactly what I was thinking of in terms of the Arthur Brooks uh, book. In terms of he talks about S curves, and actually the concept is from a British author named Charles Handy. He
Mm,
wrote a couple of books, one of which I'm reading now is called The Empty Raincoat. And the
okay.
empty raincoat, he in the S curve section, he basically says that you hit this sigmoid curve and you want to hit the next curve before you're on the decline. Because
Right.
if you're on the decline, it's really hard to change the momentum to catch the
Yes.
next curve. And I was thinking about this concept where, throughout my own career, I've changed lots and lots of times. I was doing this for a while, changed that, did something else, changed that, did something else, got an industry where there was so much change, I can then like hopscotch from thing to thing. And then I realized, I've been doing that intuitively for a long time, which is
Right.
like feel like you've plateaued and just say, okay, it's time to like buck up and just go for it, whatever the
Right.
next go for it is. And this idea of S curve, I think, is pretty powerful because, like you say, I mean, we reach these plateaus, and those times of transition are really important to see sort of what else is out there. Okay. The first question I'd like to begin with is what did having a role provide for you? What did it carry for you? What is it that it did for you? And the idea of the empty raincoat actually is a good sort of metaphor in that he is talking about this one sculpture he saw in the US somewhere where it was a raincoat with nobody inside. And that is like the
Mm.
structure of work without the person in it, right? And so the question is, what was it about of those of you who have transitioned through, right, in terms of retirement goes, or no longer working sort of in a traditional kind of role, what did that role provide?
I guess I should start with how many of us are there that in that? I'm trying to think back through the five. How many of us are there that have been through that so far, as opposed to anticipating it?
Yeah, well, I can say I'm entering into it now and I'm exploring those things. I mean, the just the structure of, what time do I wake up? I mean, my body's still waking itself up just due to cortisol, right? Waking up at, 4 o'clock in the morning, just like when I was working, uh, because my body's just trained that way. It hasn't gotten the message yet. But that's one example, right?
I mean, I feel that very strongly. I absolutely like structure in my life around those things. And in this period I've been off since I retired from Pomona, uh, I've kept rather busy with various things, and yet without that kind of structure. And it's true, I find myself sort of, why, what, when should I get up today? Why do I need to get up today? uh, I guess I should get up today. I mean, not literally that, but yeah, I do. I miss the structure. I also, but you talk about other things. I'm absolutely in my, um, whether it was in industry or academia, I'm a social office person. I'm not saying I'm
Mm,
the social butterfly, but um, I don't like, you know, sitting alone by myself today. I've never understood the people who love. I mean, I get it. The whole thing of work from home. There's lots of reasons why that can be, helpful, and but there is. I don't want to put us all, the whole world, into two categories, but let's just use it as a rough approximation. There are people who thrive on work from home, um,
hmm
who can be ultra focused that way. I have never liked it. I've always wanted to be in the office, to partly to connect with people, but also just, even if if I was focused in my office most of the day, I still needed that, periodic stand up, walk down the hallway, chit chat something. It just That's energizing, rewarding in certain ways, and I do miss that very much. But so I can't wait to get back in the classroom this fall, but also back into the just sort of into that environment where I'm connecting with people more.
Yeah. Well, I myself, right, was working remote for how many years, and I happened to find a role that was 3 miles from where I live. And
Mm-hmm.
even though the group I interacted with daily was virtual, I still showed up in a little cubicle. Why? Well, free coffee. No, well, there's that. But there it was the okay. I'm in finance in the finance group with a bunch of people that are just doing finance stuff, and it's nothing to do with me. But hey, that daily routine really did mean something, right? And when it goes
Mhm.
away, it goes away, and other things can fill up the time. And like you say, you stay busy. One of the things that I think then, I don't know if there are others that would like to chime in on this prospect, or some people, please feel free to chime in as far as structure goes.
So when I'm not being a scientist, I'm a baker. And so that has its own built-in structure, right?
Yeah.
So I do sourdough and yeast baking. And so um, I'm facing a different transition right now. I have to move to Cambridge in a year with my
Mm,
family for my position. And I'm sort of taking stock of those pieces and relationships I've built outside of the office. So um, while not particularly religious, I belong
mm,
to a church for social connection and the volunteer activities that happen year over year with those,
mm,
the baking that I do for various
mm,
community events. Like on a
mm.
day-to-day basis, there are schedules and obligations kind of related to those pieces outside of the grind of work. And that has I found that's both grounded me and provided me um, with a strong social support in the last few years, particularly since the pandemic.
You bring up such an excellent point, which is community, right? Our workplace provides instant community. You think about just the random people that are business partners that you have to interface with, and just the small talk, right? The stuff that makes things interesting. People talking about, well, they're waiting for a call to start because some uh,
Right.
manager is not there yet, and you're just saying, "How was your weekend?" And then you end up talking about
Exactly.
baking, or you're talking about volunteering, or talking about pet rescue, or you're talking about, Boy Scouts, whatever it is. And when all that goes away, I was thinking about this again, just coming out of 12 days. I was thinking of several people on the software side, Shelley. These are 10x engineers. They're using the advanced AI tools, love interacting with them. And it's like poof, no longer the Slack channel, no longer, the chit chat over, did you see this? The informal, even the text groups. Well, I had one text group, it was called the survivors group, right? Imagine that, right? So it was
Exactly.
almost like therapy. But the survivors group, they no longer text me because, well, Dale's escaped, right? He's like, he's gotten out of it. As a matter of fact, when I think about it, it was, yeah, would I normally interact with some of these people, even the people that are in my department? I'm like, yeah, not really. They're different generations, they're different, different proclivities, what have you. And it was all fine because it was okay, we're all together, we all have the same goal. And now, poof, it's gone. And I say it's gone. It's like, well, okay, I can purposely make right structure and fill it with certain types of volunteer things. And but then I think another thing for myself was this idea of me versus being useful to the world.
Mhm.
And by me, it was I can, take awesome trips. I can go ahead and spend all this time with my family. I can go ahead and do stuff that I enjoy, but am I being useful? And then it was, how important is being useful? It's like, for me, it's super important. Why? I want to do
Conditioning.
something. What's that?
It's your social conditioning, right?
Well,
That's
not only
how we
social,
have
yeah,
defined
that's
success.
true. Define
It's
success.
it's not actually it's not actually a natural law of that productivity piece, right? I just started reading the book How to Do Nothing.
What an interesting title.
It is, and it's really not about how to do nothing, but it's how to think of philosophically about redefining value and
Mm,
Mhm.
time and the the way that we value our time and the interactions that we have outside of this attention productivity commodified rat race that we have all been conditioned to define success as. It's fascinating.
yeah, I think that there's a difference, though. Wouldn't you say there's a difference between being involved in the rat race in its sort of truest, most selfish and narcissistic sense, and this idea of being useful and helpful to fellow people?
But Dale,
No,
and
because doctors do
Go
that.
ahead.
Like we do the
Huh?
same, right?
Yeah.
I hope you're about to say the same, Anoop. Like
well,
my job is very impactful to humans, but
yeah,
it's still a corporate
Yeah,
grind.
understood. No, understood. Anu?
I was going to say, yeah, I was going to echo kind of what Emily said and kind of take us to the next level. I think, at least in my kind of circle in my career, there's so much, I guess, what we call self-sacrifice, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's self-sacrifice in terms of, you know, like, when I take care of patients, I'm on call for,
Yeah.
sometimes the entire weekend, 24/7, and I'm
Man.
getting up out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning to take care of someone else, and I'm not taking care of myself. And,
Mm,
and so many other things that just lead to, you know, just higher rates of, divorce, alcoholism,
mm,
drug abuse, obesity, everything that
mm.
you can think of in terms of doctors. And doctors are supposed to be, pretty healthy people. And
Yeah.
I've toyed around with this idea and don't laugh at this, but I'm just kind of thinking about this idea. One thing I was wondering is, what if I use that concept of how to be productive, right? And flipped it on its head. I'm not going to be productive helping community or helping someone else. I'm going to take it to like the nth level, saying I'm going to be the closest to, let's say, a professional athlete as I possibly can, realizing I'm not a professional athlete. What does that consist of? It requires multiple workout sessions a day,
Hmm.
counting everything I eat, making sure everything
Yeah.
I eat is completely perfect, making sure I get a
Interesting.
nap in, making sure I get some stretching in or yoga or cold plunges or whatever it is. Basically, my entire day would be taking my body to the highest level it could possibly go to. And that would be its productive self in a way, right? My measure of productivity would be how far can I push myself to better physical, emotional, physical, health. And kind of run with that for 2, 3, 4 years, see where that takes me. And I'm wondering that whether that would help me live the better life as, someone like Peter Thiel would say about increasing your health span, not your lifespan, because that's what it's all about. It's about being able to really kind of maximize the number of years you have and
Yeah.
enjoy them. And maybe if I keep on this role of helping other people, helping community as opposed to helping myself, maybe I'm selling myself short. Or maybe it's complete egocentric and completely off. I've got no idea.
Well, I must say, I've got to say, right, both of you are involved in helping professions. And so, right, you come into it with the, like you mentioned, the whole sacrifice piece. And yet others here on this call are coming at it from sort of successful career, right? I
Right.
think of the Lily Tomlin one-liner, the problem with the rat race is that even when you win, you're still a rat. And you've got a lot of rats just going for it. It was, I don't know if you heard about the mouse experiments in the NIH during the 60s where they had mouse utopia. And if you look up mouse utopia, it is wild what happened when mice were fed and basically they're given everything they needed, right? They had as much food as they wanted, they had much sex as they wanted, and they had this whole hierarchy that was so twisted and so wild, they had to stop the experiment, right? And it got me thinking about, we're not that far away from rats, where we
Yeah.
just have a whole bunch of narcissists who just groom each other the whole day, and they had this whole hierarchy of people that were just excluded. There was like the top 10% just enjoying life, and then everybody else, all this other stuff. But I think my point is, the this idea of usefulness or productivity or being, well, now just maybe I'll just use that word useful because it's a useful word.
Hmm.
This idea of usefulness of your skills and your knowledge and your experience and your wisdom count for something. And all of a sudden, when you retire, it's like, you're retired. You are now a cipher. You are now just a nobody. Meaning all that experience that we once paid you very well for, it's worth zero. And that's where it makes me think, maybe there is something about this getting paid to do a job.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Robin, you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say the other side of that is, aside from productivity, we've been talking about for a while. In many ways, there's also this sense of identity. Who are you?
Yeah,
I mean, it reminds me of like, as an undergrad in college, the standard thing was you meet someone, you say, "Oh, what's your major?" As if
yeah,
that, I mean, that's not everything they are, but quickly we sort people
yeah,
and you know if you retire, if you don't do anything anymore. I mean, if someone says, "Well, what do you do?" Oh, well, I'm retired. But someone, they don't ask, "Well, what are you?" But we do define ourselves that. My wife defines herself as a middle school teacher. It's so important to her. She loves it. I used to define myself as was it Shelley? I was a software guy, and then that changed to I'm a professor, and now I'm like, well, what am I? What do I do? And I think, and it may not be rational, and I don't know how actually important it is, but I do think we're either wired or conditioned to want that.
we are conditioned to want that. I mean, I think you bring up a good point. What am I? Right? And for me to go ahead and straddle it by basically refusing the term retirement and to say, I'm doing a portfolio life. What is a portfolio life? It's fractional stuff. And what is fractional stuff? Yeah, I'm working really hard on things that I believe are useful for others.
Hmm.
And I think we get back to that usefulness piece. But that you think about, for example, both of you are physicians or veterinarians and development or what have you. I mean, there's so much accumulated knowledge, so much delayed
Yep.
gratification and incredible training, right? And you say, well, all that's been accumulated and building, and I myself, was in life sciences. I mean, there's like a never-ending compounding effect of that knowledge, right?
Mhm.
Because the more you learn, the more the field advances, the more people are trying to play catch up with, stuff that's like growing in exponential rates. I mean, I can imagine in the software business where things are also growing and changing at exponential rates, people are just struggling to keep up. And yet there is value to people that are practitioners in it. And then the question is, okay, well, am I doomed to a lifetime of practicing when I really don't want to do that for a full-time thing anymore?
Mhm.
Like, well, nobody's forcing me to do this. But then perhaps maybe there needs to be other channels where people can work fractionally or people can explore. I mean, people are free to do other things, but it seems like society is just not very well set up for somebody working at a half-time, right? You don't see people doing job
Yeah.
sharing. You don't see people doing, right, fractional work.
That's it's quite common in my field as a transition
Mm,
um, for people to consult for 3 to 5 years when they formally retire.
mm,
Usually after a gap
hmm.
to manage out any non-disclosure agreements or non-competes.
Yeah.
But I do find a number of my mentors, as I reach 50, my mentors are reaching their late 60s and 70s, and some of
Hmm.
them are in their 80s. A few of them, like cold turkey retired. Most of them
Yeah.
had strong community connections and strong hobbies like bird watching or walking or writing or things that they really felt strongly they wanted to spend more time doing, which sounds a little bit like your pivot,
Hmm.
Dale.
Mm.
Um, Others, either because of those folks who retired completely were in Canada with pensions and didn't have to worry about health
Yes.
insurance.
Mhm.
Yes.
Where there were more of those gaps, people tended to do a consulting route more commonly, and then either gradually decreased that over time, or then eventually sort of entered into a second retirement.
I can think of two individuals who did very well, stopped working, and got bored. One friend, yeah, he's now CEO of a startup company. He told me, Dale, he goes, I got the most cool workshop I've always dreamed of. So I asked Tony, so how many pieces of furniture did you make before you got bored? He says he made three pieces. So he made these three awesome pieces, and then it was, this is just not enough, right? And so he went right back into very demanding role, very demanding sort of position, very difficult as far as what the company's trying to do, and he loves it, right? And I think and you might say, well, I'm not a CEO or whatever, but I think it's just illustrative of, all that accumulated knowledge. And all of a sudden, the next thing he's doing is making furniture. And he admitted it wasn't that good. I mean, because I mean, it was a hobby. And then all of a sudden, he gets this really high-end equipment. And then it's like, okay, I could do all these things I wanted to do, but it's just, it was just this hobby that wasn't all that fulfilling. I mean, certainly there are different strokes for different folks. There's some people that really have a full menu of things that they have been itching and dying to do. But I'd say, well, yeah, of course, there are other people that just want to line the beach. I mean, I just say, great, line the beach, I just could not do that. I just built differently. There are some a new person, David. You want to say something about yourself? Introduce yourself.
Yeah,
What
sorry I
you
was
do?
late. My wife was
No
on
worries.
the newborn. I don't know if you can hear me. My
Yeah,
wife
we
was
can
on
hear.
the overnight newborn duties, so I
Yeah.
took over the for the morning, and the kid was throwing up and stuff. So,
Hmm.
well, I work with many post-exit founders, and they're
Hmm.
usually younger, early 40s, in their 30s, and
Hmm.
they're already exited. So they're definitely not thinking retirement. But on the
Hmm.
retirement issue, uh, I do work with uh, CEOs who've moved into retirement in their 60s, and many of them sit on boards, and sometimes they can sit on boards like full time. So there
Hmm.
are ways of contributing. I think maybe instead of usefulness or alongside usefulness, contribution might be a category that could be helpful. How could
Right.
we contribute to our community? And I think it's also a human need. Uh, there have been studies that show that we die earlier
Hmm.
if we retire early. So the retirement has to be handled skillfully, as we're getting to, I think. And so it is important to know that you could a mentor or you might move into coaching. I'm a certified coach and a therapist, and in my leadership coaching trainings, there were
Hmm.
quite a few people who were
Hmm.
doing this as a second career, coming into their 70s and learning how to coach to come back to maybe their at their company as a coach on sort of on the payroll, but in a consulting kind of a situation.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
there are many places where you, as a retiree, you could contribute to your industry or junior people, and you can even do it for free if you want, and then they'd be very happy to take your time. But I think it is important to contribute to look beyond ourselves to contribute and give ourselves a kind of sense of purpose, rather than it just being I'm done working and now I'll do my hobby. I think it's important for all of us.
Yeah, it was kind of wild last summer. I went on a extended Excel spreadsheet AI thing trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the effect of me calling it quits here, me calling it quits here, me calling it quits here, and modeling it all out. And then accounting for the complicated tax code, accounting for, Roth conversions, all kinds of blah, blah, blah. And at the end of it, it was, I can work 3 more years and it's going to make a 2.2 percentage difference.
Right.
It's like, why in the hell am I going to give up 3 solid years in my 60s for 2.2%? I mean, really? And then the other problem, right, which is I think something that you touched on, David, which is I don't know. Well, right now, I have the maximum time I'm ever going to have for the rest of my life. I've got the maximum health for the rest of my
Mhm.
life, right? And I have the maximum money that I'm ever going to have in my life. Meaning, you might say, well, Dale, you can go ahead and hit it big or whatever. It's like, well, no, I'm kind of like, I'm at peak. I'm at peak. It's all downhill from here. And to Anoop, to your point, right on the keeping in shape, yes, I can delay it, right? I can delay it certainly. And on the time, though, I have no idea how much time I have.
Mhm.
And then on the money front, it's like, yeah, I'm fine. I don't need an extra 2.2% to exchange, my energy and life effort. I read that Robinson book, Your Money or Your Life when it first came out, decades ago. Apparently, it's still selling well. Apparently, it still resonates with people. And that's what? How many life hours am I spending in exchange for this activity? Either it's work or it's play or what have you. And those are things that I'm thinking, okay, I'm 62 now. I have maybe 12 or 15 good years left. And that is it. It's not a renewable resource. It's not coming back. And heaven forbid, I mean, I can fall dead like tomorrow, right? I mean, any of us. It's pretty wild. My next door neighbor, right? He passed away 3 years ago of a heart attack. And then the next door neighbor to him, died of it was like an epileptic seizure, just like a year later. And I'm like, okay, well, the Grim Reaper's going that way down the block. Good thing I'm living on the other side. It doesn't work like that, right? I mean, I don't know how much time I have. None of us do. And so that's where I'm thinking, okay, I'm trying to optimize everything, but I can't optimize everything, but I do have some choices. So I like what you said though, David, about the coaching piece, because I think that's a really really useful model to think about.
Yeah, I spend a fair amount of my time coaching undergraduate and graduate students and early career folks. It's energizing for me. It's useful to them. It's good for everybody.
Hmm.
I went back and did a master's degree a couple of years ago just because I wanted to do in public health. And it was really fun hanging out with a bunch of young doctors. They're so, so unjaded. It was really lovely.
Unjaded.
How much do you guys think that AI will eat into coaching? Like the
Oh,
ability
the
to
AI coaches are really terrible. I
really?
mean, like spectacularly terrible.
It hasn't been my experience.
I'm sorry. That's
Hmm.
good.
Hmm.
I'm coaching on very technical, like specific career-based aspects, though.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I will say though, one thing I've been thinking about as it relates to AI, and I don't really have any sort of coding experience myself. I certainly don't have any operating experience in terms of, founding companies and organizing them. But
Hmm.
this technology in particular is such a disruptive technology that it allows those who really don't have much experience at all to maybe take that leap, saying, "Hey, I have an idea. Let me go get like a few agents or whatever and try to operationalize this. I'll buy like these little Mac cubes or whatever is needed. I've got no
Hmm.
idea, just floating things out there. And
Hmm.
what's the worst case scenario is you spend, 10 or 20 grand on some CapEx and you
Hmm.
shoot out some emails and you got all these agents working for you and the business goes to bust. I mean, David will tell you that this probably happens to founders all the time. Nothing's going to work out every single time, but it certainly gives you, I guess, a few of the ingredients I'm looking for, which is, to occupy some time, to feel that I'm doing something productive, that something's got some potential. It may or may not work out, but I'm not necessarily looking for, the financial security it brings. I'm looking for a financial upside, but if nothing happens, it doesn't happen. But it kind of allows you to get a glimpse in a world which you would never be able to kind of enter into otherwise without this tool, this disruptor. And so I've been kind of playing around with that idea about, what's a space that I know, which is like kind of
Hmm.
medicine and health.
Yeah.
I can think of five different projects I could probably look into and try to
Yeah.
use a few agents to create,
Yeah.
um, and maybe become, an entrepreneur, something I've never become before. The doors are finally open.
And it's a wild time to live through. I mean, think about it. Well, when I think about it, the fact that I lived through the 90s and the early aughts in terms of the sort of the internet 1.0, right? That we lived through this huge technological change and that we're hitting the second one now, another huge technological change. I did some, well, for some of the writing I was doing, I did some analysis of how to put $660 billion of CapEx in this year in a perspective of the railroads. And it turns out that over a 30-year period, if you divide it into 10-year chunks, the US spent an equivalent of $300 billion every 10 years. So we're spending the equivalent of 300 of twice that in 1 year.
Mhm.
It's unbelievable sort of what's happening. And the unintended consequences of railroads were things like frozen food, right? Where all of a sudden frozen food became available because of cheap transportation across the country. Now all of a sudden people were eating a lot better. They're eating vegetables in the wintertime. And now we're living through this amazingly useful technology that's highly disruptive. I mean, whatever edge cases, it's every day is a wild thing. And there's more choices than ever as far as things to do with time and things to do with expertise and things to do as far as
Mhm.
being useful. I mean, maybe it is. Uh, our own dumb luck that we're living through this time now, where there are
Mhm.
that many more options, right?
Well, maybe I can speak to Erica's question or point about AI and coaching and
Hmm.
expertise. I think AI definitely will replace jobs that require expertise. It's just a matter
Hmm.
of time. And then robotics will replace manual labor. It's just a matter of time. What it's one of the last things it will replace is something we don't want it to replace, which is relationships. And the
Hmm.
research on therapeutic effectiveness shows that it's not so much the method that the therapist uses, but it's the therapeutic alliance, it's the relationship. And what's really ego destroying for coaches is that if you do when you do the debrief on the way out,
Hmm.
what the client usually says that was most transformational is never the great insight that the therapist or client or therapist or coach thought he was giving. It was uh, some offhand thing that came out of their relationship. And it was really just the fact that there's this human being who cares a lot about you and is going to listen to you fully. I mean, AI can do that, but it's just a chatbot. It's still in the back of your mind, you know, where you're thinking, this isn't a real human, right? And does it even
Hmm.
feel anything?
And that's the point. It doesn't, right? It's a simulacrum of a human being. You have to do all the
Right.
work yourself anyway, right? And but you can do it with somebody who's just like everything else while you're standing in line waiting to board,
Sure. Well,
right? While
AI
stuff is
has passed
happening.
the
Mhm.
Turing test for consciousness, which is that like can you
Hmm.
fool a human on the other side to thinking you're a real human? And people definitely treat AI chat interfaces as if it was a real person.
Mhm.
And there's so that you can definitely form a relationship with your AI. I've given it names too, just as like Jarvis and Friday and Mike. I was
Mhm.
Mike Claude, and it's kind of scary that you forget that's not a human. And they act like they have feelings. They're actually programmed to their feelings are hurt or they
Mhm.
get like I can see you're very angry. Let me see if I can,
Hmm.
and they apologize.
Hmm.
So you're right, Eric. I think it's just a matter of time
And they
before people.
lie because
Oh
they
yes,
don't
right.
want you to upset
They're
them,
cunning.
which is why I'm like,
Hmm.
no, that's all right. You keep the
Hmm.
freaky toys over in that box. I'll stay here with my bread.
I I think this is connected to something that I think Robin was talking about, you know, why you go to the office. I mean, in my case, pre-pandemic, I work in the software industry, but I felt much more part of a team.
Hmm.
During the pandemic, there was a lot of hiring that was distributed all over the world. So even though I might go to an office once a week, no one I work
Mhm.
with is really there. I go there in on purpose to connect with certain people in the larger group. Um, but human brains, even to evolve, like as we're children, we need other human brains, right? And so I think what you're pointing to is it's that there's that human connection that can never get replaced. But
Hmm.
we're at a very interesting time where at least in the industry I'm in, I think people are really suffering from like huge loneliness because they are working from home more than they even
Hmm.
want to, because there's no there for them to go and be and have those conversations, those hallway conversations you were speaking about, Robin, and also just collaborating with people, in person. And I think it's just going to be a very interesting time as AI is going to, because it can catalog huge volumes of expertise and spit that back at us. There's still a relationship that's missing, in decision making and judgment and wisdom. And so I don't know. I don't really have a point other than just like I think this is gonna be a very interesting time to see how this all unfolds. And I think this is connected. When I think about what I want to do next, for me, I want to be part of a team
Yeah.
that I'm working with something, with a
Yeah.
team on something we're doing together collaboratively, with a kind of a mission. And,
Yeah.
for me, I have certain interests in climate and ocean science and all of that, but fill in the blank. I think like that's just a really powerful thing when you talk about having community and something that people used to. Some people still get that from their workplace,
Hmm.
but in a lot of cases, they're not really getting that from their workplace anymore.
You bring up a really good point, and that is the epidemic of loneliness. I mean, there are a lot of lonely people due to the fact that they're not spending as much time in real life conversation, in real life interaction, right? That so much of it is through screens. You can say that even this call is through a screen. But nonetheless, we all know that there are people behind it. It's not just some bot, or at least I don't think, Shelley, that you're a bot. I, like I guess we're in this world where I shouldn't believe everything I see. But that loneliness aspect, maybe we touch on that a little bit, right? Because that whole change, going through this phase of, okay, I'm retiring to something. It can't be nothing. And yet, what is going to help? What are those structures? What are those inviolable rules, right? And Robin, one of the things I was asking AI about was how to structure my week. And the AI had all kinds of great ideas in terms of, X number of people to regularly check in on. And I was getting into Dunbar's analysis of social circles of, right, the closest two or three, the outer circle of 15, and then one of 50 and one of 150. And I'm like, okay, well, do I have to get into all the research? And of course, within my uh, source.md or claude.md file, it's like, yeah, provide all the PubMed references and all the sociological literature on it. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's being turned on me to give me all this data about how I need to engineer my relationships. So as an aside, I go to this conference, Bio IT World, last week in Boston, and I'm feeding my relationships into Claude about exactly what I was experiencing in terms of this lunch with this person and catching up with this person. And Claude was able to come up with themes and similarities and tying several different interactions I had with several things I was just doing intuitively, right? And I thought, here it is. I've got a thinking partner who's able to analyze my own relationships. It was, in one sense, it was kind of scary. Another sense, it was super exciting because I never really thought about myself and my relationship with my boss 5 companies ago. And all of a sudden, we're at lunch in Boston, and he brings up Naoto Kondo, who I introduced to him 8 years ago. And he takes a selfie of us at lunch and says, I'm going to send it to Naoto-san because your introduction, Dale, has blossomed into a very healthy relationship. And I'm like, oh, okay, I had no idea. And then in the same conference, it brings up a relationship I had. Nah, that sounds weird. A person that I knew 22 years ago. We're at the same conference. She reaches out to me via LinkedIn and says, Dale, I'm going to be at Bio IT World. And I'm like, what? Celia? The inside sales rep, from Los Angeles? What? So we get together after 22 years and, of course, right, we catch up very quickly. And next thing you know, Claude is pointing out, hey, Dale, the dynamic that happened with Manfred happened with Celia. This is an N of 2. And then another situation came up, same thing, where the connection was made, the usefulness or whatever, the whole transactional nature. And I think this is a long way of saying that AI is remarkable even when it comes to the analytical on relationships.
Hmm.
I mean,
But how did you
unearthing. Mhm. Go ahead.
how did you use that? Like, why was that important to you? Help me understand.
Well, in a conference, these scientific conferences, they operate on many different levels,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
The
No, I
content
know.
piece,
But like
but on
the
the
aspect of the
personal,
AI.
on the aspect of the AI was this idea of me feeding contacts to help keep track of a number of the interactions that I don't want to forget about. Because a lot of times
Okay.
I
Okay.
forget so many things. It's difficult to
Yes.
prioritize how this person is useful in this particular context. The other person's sort of this. This person I met at a booth represents this company. That could be really useful, right, to these people over here. So at a conference, there's lots of different shapes of people and lots of different shapes of introductions. I'll have, a whole bunch of business cards, and they just end up in the bottom of a drawer, and a lot of that knowledge, then AI is able to accurately keep track of just as a data repository. But what I didn't count on was the unexpected insight. And you might say, well, but it's a word prediction machine. It's like, well, no, you need to understand emergent properties. is more than a word prediction machine. There are emergent principles, things that are doing that we don't quite understand. And it's okay. It's a very powerful technology just because of its unpredictable nature. And if you want proof, um, there's a paper Microsoft wrote in 2023 called Sparks of AGI. This is when GPT 3.5 was out and GPT 4 was still in pre-release. And it's 110 pages long, this paper, but it talks about all the edge cases of emergent principles, latex, and other kinds of programming. They're basically, there's one illustration of a unicorn asking it to produce an image of a unicorn using latex, a very difficult graphics language. And it did it. How in the world did it understand what a unicorn is, much less draw it in latex? But you look at that data and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is wild. So anyway. Now, when I hinted to the head of R&D of the last company I was with that I was in a place where I didn't need to work full time, he says, Dale, if I were you and I had all this time, he goes, I would spend 8 hours a day on AI. It goes to show how much my friend Seth really felt like this was a time, like you, Anoop, to really go deep, right? Because
Yeah.
something happened in late December with agents. What this last week's conference said, and I'm sure the software people can verify this, something happened in December to where toward the end of January, Andrej Karpathy wrote a tweet that basically said, before mid-December, 80% of code was manual and 20% was automated touch-up. Now
Right.
it's flipped, where 80% of code is automated and the 20% is
Right.
touch. And I verified that with people that I know that, the age of software, something's changed. And the last 4 or 5 months have been very, very different. Software developers are getting very, very little sleep
Right.
because they're becoming so powerful in what they can do. And not to for it to be something scared of, but rather software is going to end up eating more of the world, right? It's going to show up in more places just because people with ideas to say, this is a software problem.
Mhm.
Before I didn't have the expertise, and before it was just out of my reach to do something like this, and I can go ahead and do it. So, food for thought. I mean, it's food for thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I see we lost a few attendees. Maybe I went too far off the deep end in
No,
talking
no, I think it was
about.
just a timing piece.
What's that? I'm sorry.
I think it was just a timing piece. David had another meeting because it's
Oh,
nine
okay.
o'clock. He's in Taipei, he said, and
Oh, he's
Oh,
Erica
in
had to
sweet.
go as
Taipei.
well.
We
When
hit
he
our
said
we
his
hit our
wife was on the overnight and he was picking up the morning, I figured he must be even further west than our
Oh,
California
that's
colleagues.
right. I didn't pick up on that. Oh man, he's in Taipei.
I'm
Wow.
gonna have to hop off here in a little bit too, so sorry to cut it off shortly.
Okay. Well, hey, it was great hanging out. I don't know, Emily, Robin, if you want to hang out some more. Anoop, thank you for joining. It's great to
Thank
see
you.
you,
I had a
man.
great time.
Yeah.
I will
nice
let the two
meeting
of you catch up. I gotta go chase littles to bed.
All right,
Or not
Emily.
so
Thanks for
littles.
joining.
It was a fascinating conversation, folks. Thanks for having me.
Very kind of
Best
you.
wishes,
Thank you.
Dale. Good night, Robin.
Thank you.